All right. Thank you so much. And pardon me for the technical difficulty, but let's proceed. So our session for this afternoon is on beyond punishment, restorative practices every teacher should try. Now, let's take a look at how we are going to move in this session. Okay. First, we're going to talk about what restorative practices are, the whats and the whys. And then I'm going to introduce to you the three pillars of restorative classrooms. And then we move on to what the 10 restorative practices every teacher should try are. And followed by that, we're going to talk about the obstacles and the mindset shifts. And towards the end of our session this afternoon, we're going to have a final reflection and the action plan. All right. So, what are restorative practices? Please read along with me. Restorative practices is a transdisciplinary field of study that examines how to strengthen relationships between individuals and improve social connections within communities. Restorative practices are used in conflict resolution, creating dialogue, bringing gaps between divided groups, and building cultures where all members have a voice, work more effectively together, and become more innovative. Now, in schools, restorative practices positively impact student behavior and school climate. They, number one, create a sense of belonging. They minimize harm and support student learning while cultivating students who are better equipped to navigate complex challenges, self-regulate, manage conflict, and become better citizens. They uncover the root causes of conflict and create a space to facilitate complex conversations to minimize harm, repair relationships, and identify solutions. Now, very technical. First time to hear the expression restorative processes? Well, don't worry. This afternoon, we're going to look into what exactly restorative practices are, and we're going to see how that can be applied in our school setting, no? To address misbehavior and the consequences that go along with misbehavior. All right? Now, the conflict resolution that is being referred to here in the definition of restorative practice is how the teacher is going to address the problem, and the conflict being the offense that is committed by the student in the classroom, or the and that can take many forms. So that can be disrespect, that can be delinquency in submission of requirements, that can be misbehavior, like talking out of turn, or not sitting properly, things like that, no? So this afternoon, we're going to talk about how you are going to change the student's behavior, not by punishment, but by restorative practices. What they are, we will soon find out. Okay, let's talk about traditional discipline first. You know, the problem about traditional discipline, and by this we mean what is the usual manner in which problems in the classroom are addressed, no? First, it is focused on control and punishment. Why do we say it's focused on control and punishment? Well, usually when there is an offense that is committed by a student, the teacher feels that they are not in control. And so for them to be able to establish control over the student, they need to punish. Okay, and that is how traditional discipline operates. No? Um, well, traditional discipline creates for resistance, creates fear rather, and resistance, and does not give any room for reflection. What is highlighted is the offense of the student and how angry the teacher was about it. Okay. Also, it escalates and often leaves relationships fractured. Why so? Because the offense was not, or the misbehavior was not properly addressed. Okay. For this afternoon, I'm going to share with you a story. And I'd like you to remember the details of this story because as we move along in our discussion in this webinar, we will keep referring to some parts of this particular story. It is almost dismissal time. Pardon the error there. It's almost dismissal time, and the teacher is collecting the book reports due. John, the boy in the picture, has something to submit, has nothing to submit, sorry. And the teacher says, John, where is your book report? John doesn't say anything. The teacher says, well, I'm waiting. And then John, still no response. The teacher, yelling already, says, nothing? Stay after class. Okay? The bell rings and the students start to leave. The teacher approaches John without even waiting for everybody to leave yet. Okay? And the teacher says, well, what do you have to say for yourself? John hesitatingly looks up at the teacher and says in a sad voice, I don't really want to talk about it. And then the teacher, clearly upset already, says, fine. Not only will you get a 0 as grade for the book report, I will call your parents to tell them about it. Now leave. Okay. Remember this story, and we will be referring to parts of it as we move along. Now, let's go back to the restorative approach and let's see how we can connect it to what we just heard, no? That story of the boy and the teacher, the student who was supposed to submit the book report, John, and the fact that he was not able to. Okay, what is the restorative approach? First of all, it focuses not on the isolation, but more so the inclusion. So that means um, instead of the attention being on the fact that the student is different from everyone else because of what he did, which in the previous story is he did not submit the book report that was due to him. Instead of focusing on that, there will be when we do the restorative approach, we try to bring back the student along with everyone else who submitted, okay? And we will give the opportunity for the student to correct the error that he committed, and that is the non-submission of the book report. Now, also part of the restorative approach is from blaming the student for the offense, you shift it to allowing the student to take responsibility for his action and further enabling the student to have an opportunity to correct it by giving the student the chance to submit. Of course, that there will be consequences for the late submission, but the fact is you're not dismissing the student per se because you're giving the student the opportunity to make up for what he had done. All right. And from punishment, there will be healing. So instead of now the student feeling that, okay, I'm gonna get a zero because I did not submit, and he will be miserable for it, he will now begin to heal because he will realize, oh, my teacher was considerate enough to give me a chance. Uh, there may be some point deductions because that is the natural consequence for late submission, but at least the teacher enabled me to make up for my offense. All right. So essentially, we are seeing now more and more how the restorative approach works. No? And let's take a look at the details of it. First, before that, let's ask ourselves, what is the most common form of punishment in your school? Okay, so some of us have already taught for quite some time and can relate to the things that we are seeing here, no, on screen. First, could it be detention? That's a go-to consequence that teachers met out to offending students. Is it suspension? Sometimes, when detention doesn't work anymore, the teacher resorts to suspension. Is it public reprimand? As in, wherever the student may be, whether it's in the classroom or in the hallway, you resort to a verbal reprimand. Is it an incident report? Okay, which outlines and details the offense, puts it on record, and sometimes it's even sent to the parents, no? So that they will be informed. Or is it a telephone call to the parents telling them, okay, your daughter did not submit the project that was due yesterday, right? So which one is it? And which one is your go-to consequence or punishment? Let's talk about the three pillars of restorative classrooms. So now we're looking into whether those punishments and our tendency to resort to them is the proper way to address misbehavior and offenses in the classroom. Restorative approach emphasizes relationships. Okay, it's important for the teacher and the student to be able to maintain the relationship despite the offense and despite the natural consequence of the punishment. Okay, now it emphasizes connection before correction. So as you can see here, the teacher says, please stay a while after class and let's talk about how I can help you. So instead of saying, for instance, well, you did not submit the book report, so naturally you're going to get 0. Okay, so there's no connection there anymore. It's like the teacher is already dismissing the student by saying that, okay, that's a natural consequence, you get a 0. That's it. End of story. Okay, so the restorative approach emphasizes connection. So the relationship is sustained. Okay, and there is an attempt to repair and undo what had been done. Okay. Second, there is accountability with dignity. Okay. I was told you dropped a beaker in the science lab and it broke. I'm relieved that you didn't get hurt. Tell me how it happened and let's talk about how we can or what we can do to replace it. So instead of saying, Okay, so I was told you broke a beaker. Okay, I'm gonna ask the science lab technician how much it costs, and you have to pay for it. Okay, and then the student ends up feeling, wait, I didn't even get a chance to explain how it happened. It wasn't intentional on my part. I just dropped it. It was purely accidental. Okay, fine. I would probably need to replace it, but couldn't the teacher have asked me at least to share the story about how it happened? Okay, so in a situation wherein you need to hold the student accountable, you have to keep in mind that you have to still give the student the chance to share what had happened. And at the same time, as in the example here, wherein the beaker was broken in the science lab, there was concern coming from the teacher. So the dignity of the student, instead of saying that the student uh, is butterfingers and does not, and does not practice care in the science lab, um, the teacher, still went out of his way to be able to show concern by saying, I'm glad, I'm relieved that you were not hurt, because that's broken glass. So there's accountability with dignity, right? Now, the focus is on repairing and not exacting revenge. So it looks like you're upset about what I said in class. Once you are calmer, tell me more about how you're feeling so I can help you. Right? So instead of saying, wait, that's very disrespectful. Can you please stop it? Okay. And um, it's like you want to get even for the disrespectful remark that the student gave you. So instead of getting back at the student because you are very upset, you go the extra mile and try to put yourself in the shoes of the student and find out why the student feels that way and why the student uttered that remark, that disrespectful remark, for instance, and you discuss, no? So you're building you're reinforcing your teacher-student connection, and you are trying to repair it so that it doesn't get damaged. All right. So emphasis on relationships first. That's what the restorative approach is all about. Okay. Now, since we've more or less come to a good idea of what restorative practices is all about, let's take a look at how these can actually be done in the classroom. The first, affective statements. What are affective statements? Okay, so for this, you speak feelings and not accusations. An example, when you did that, I felt disrespected because, then you explain. Okay, so you are explaining your feeling, but you are not attaching any accusation on the offending student. No? So you're not saying you are very disrespectful or you did not learn anything from your parents about good manners. Okay? Or in Filipino, you are bastos, bastos ka. So you are not accusing the student of anything, but you are sending your feelings across to the student that you felt disrespected, and you are explaining why you feel disrespected. Right? So if you are to complete the sentence, you probably will say, I felt disrespected because you shouted at me, and everyone else in class was surprised at how you reacted. And I think that was improper. So you're speaking your feelings, but at the same time, you're not attaching labels. You're not accusing the boy or the girl in the case of co-ed schools. Um, you're not accusing the student of being that way and attaching a label to it, and even calling the student by some offensive name. So once again, you speak feelings, not accusations. That's the first. Second, restorative questions. Now, you ask to reflect, not just to correct. So when you say, why did you do that? It's not because your goal is right away to correct the student for what he did, but instead you're enabling the student to go through the process so that he can have the opportunity to assess why that happened, why he did that, why he was delinquent in the submission of the requirement, right? And ultimately, as you proceed in the conversation, you will be able to process the root cause of the problem and address it properly. So the bottom line here is you are asking not because you want to be able to correct the student for what offense it was that he or she committed. You are going to achieve that, okay? You will be able to correct the behavior, but however, the emphasis is more on enabling the student to reflect on what was done. Okay? Now, you ask questions like who was affected by what you did? All right? What can be done to make things right? Okay? So you are enabling the student to think about the offense in this way. All right? So those are what we call restorative questions. Now, the third one, think sheets and reflection logs. What are these? First, when you do think sheets, you're actually replacing punishment with self-assessment and reflection. So how do you go about that? You ask a student, okay, here's a piece of paper. Take your pen with you. I'd like you to answer the following questions about what just happened. Okay, first, you give me the details. You relate to me from your perspective how that thing happened a while ago. Just explain, narrate everything from your own perspective. Then answer the question, what were you thinking when you did that? In the story that we had earlier, John, why was it that you were not replying to my questions? What was going on in your head? What were you thinking? Okay. Right. Now, also, you can look back into why it was in the first place that the book report was not submitted. So in the course of the narration of why the book report was not submitted and which led to that confrontation in the classroom, you're able to make the students reflect on what just happened and write it down. Okay? Because this will be the springboard for the next part, which is what will you do differently the next time? So you can ask the student there, what steps can you take to assure that you will no longer be um, uh, submitting requirements late? And for that other offense in the classroom wherein uh, uh, the student refused to answer the teacher's questions, you can also uh, ask a student, since I was asking you questions, why were you not answering? From there, you will see in the reflection that perhaps you as a teacher, when you read it, you will see that perhaps you as a teacher were scaring the student. That's why the student could not reply to you. And that will also enable you to reflect on your own method of addressing the problem. So it works both ways. No? The think sheets will enable the student to reflect, and at the same time, you as a teacher, when you read the reflection of your student, you will also see where you may have gone wrong in addressing the problem. Okay, so it's going to be a win-win situation for both you and the student. All right, next, circle time check-ins. What is this all about? First, when you check in with your student on a regular basis, you're actually building relationships proactively. So this means you try to nurture your relationship with the student by asking, but asking things like, "How are we feeling today?" And you will be surprised, no? A student who yesterday you had to correct because of an offense, and you talk to the student what will be done about it the next day. When you ask the student, "Hey, how are you feeling?" the student will actually feel good about himself. Okay, so in effect, the student's self-esteem is getting restored by the simple question of how are you feeling, how was your weekend. Okay, so this is a very effective restorative practice that a teacher can do, especially for students whom we sense are in need of more attention coming from the teacher, because we detect that there is uh, perhaps a problem at home that also needs to be addressed, which you can of course address together with the parents. But going back to circle time check-ins, let's remember that even the simplest question of how are you feeling today is going to repair whatever damage is already creeping in the relationship between the teacher and the student. Or after class, what have you learned today? Okay, you see the student in the cafeteria taking a snack, and then we say, "Hey, how was it? How was class?" Right? So, how did you feel about today's lesson? So you are, in effect, detaching yourself from the offense that was committed by the student, and at the same time, you're able to make the student feel that, oh, my teacher is still concerned about maintaining a good relationship with me, despite the fact that I committed an offense. Okay, so that's how you build your relationships proactively. Next, repair plans. What is this? You move beyond just requiring the student to apologize for the offense, no? Um, and acknowledging the apology that the student will give you. Okay, you move beyond that. How do you do it? You plan concrete actions to make things right. Okay, you you probably can ask the student, okay, I think it will, if it's going to make you feel better, you can write me a letter and explain to me how you are feeling. Okay. And I'll read it. I promise I'm going to read it myself right away as soon as you give it to me. Okay. So you are attempting to repair the relationship by moving beyond just settling for, I'm sorry, sir, I was disrespectful. That's it. Okay, so because that enables the student to acknowledge that there was an offense that he committed, but that doesn't do much in the sense that there is no further positive action that the student can do. Okay, the student may actually even end up feeling that the apology is enough and that's it. So the student will may even carry the wrong notion that whenever something is done, when an offense is committed, it's enough to just say sorry. No more reparation, no more natural consequence of having to undo by repairing, literally repairing what was broken. All right. So um, you move beyond the sorry by enabling the student to correct the action through another possibility is an act of kindness. So um, for instance, the student was very harsh on a classmate. Okay, so you process the event or the incident with the student, and then you uh, encourage the student to have an opportunity to apologize to his classmate. Moving beyond sorry means, okay, you apologized and she accepted. And perhaps what we need to look into here is why you have the tendency to snap at your classmates right away. So maybe one way is one way for you to repair the relationship with your offended classmate is to do an act of kindness. Okay. And that act of kindness can take any form. It can be something related to the offense itself, or it can be, a mere, can I help you with anything? Or do you need a sharpener for your pencil? Okay. So all of those things go beyond just apologizing because you are attempting to repair the damage that you have done on the person you offended. Okay, so that's what we mean when we say repair plan. All right. Another method that you can do is what we call restorative conferences. What is this? You have formal meetings to repair deep harm. Okay, I remember when there are incidences of grave offenses by a student, um, one of the things that the investigative body will do is to call for a conference. So it's a meeting of the person who committed the offense and the offended party, the classmate, or well, hopefully not a person of authority in school, no? But sometimes that can also happen. So there is a formal meeting that is convened, and then everything is explained. Okay, we are going to look into this incident, and we'd like your cooperation by telling us the truth about what happened. Okay, so there is an attempt to enable the person who committed an offense to explain and be heard, not just by the teacher himself, but by the person or persons who were offended by the student. Okay. Now that's facilitated, of course, by well, it could be the teacher himself if it's involving students in his classroom, or sometimes that's actually even facilitated by the principal or some school officer who is designated with the responsibility of looking into disciplinary cases. But the bottom line is there is an opportunity for everyone to sit down and discuss. Okay. Now, let's talk about positive noticing notes. What do we mean by this? Catch good behavior and name it. Okay, this can be verbal. Okay, for instance, in the classroom, somebody comes in and first thing in the morning starts greeting everybody, very cheerful, and you, class advisor, you notice that hey, this student of mine seems to be very cheerful today. Call it out and say, hey, David, you're very cheerful today, huh? That's good. Oh, class. Uh, let's be like David, no? Very cheerful, starting the day right. Okay, so you're catching the behavior and taking notice of it and making the student know that that behavior is good. Okay. And that student who may have committed an offense the day before against someone in the class, or maybe the teacher himself or herself, will feel good about himself because uh, the student will feel na okay, the my teacher was good enough to be detached from what I had done yesterday or the other day and gave me a chance to start all over again and did not brand me or did not um, embarrass me in front of my classmates. And bottom line, the teacher is now behaving as though all is forgotten. Okay, and it's actually taking note of my effort to show good behavior this time around. Okay, so that's what we mean by positive noticing notes. Okay, so an example is I noticed you have a classmate today when no one was watching. Okay. All right, let's go to reintegration rituals, the next one. What does this mean? Welcome back after a suspension or an absence. Glad you're back. Let's talk about how we can move forward. So, for instance, it was a grave offense that the student committed, and part of school rules and regulations is it has to be meted out with a suspension or or well um, let's say the student is asked to do some kind of service which will take him out of the classroom, and then once the student is back, hey, welcome back. So you are now again coming across as okay, all is forgotten. Okay, let's not focus on what you had done. Let's move forward. You're back, and welcome. And it's good that you're back. And let's go on ahead with what we need to do. Okay, so the student will feel that again, there is no focus on the offense that he had committed, and there is an attempt to put things back to normal and reintegrate me and not label me as an offender in the classroom and different from everyone else. All right. Peer mediation. What does this mean? In the classroom there are what we call the school class officers. So they are elected um, because they are trusted. All right. And there's a certain level of maturity that is expected of them. No? And more often than not, these people rise to the occasion. No? And these class officers, your council, as some, in some schools may refer to it, can be the ones who can mediate, no, mediate, in order for misbehavior or offenses to be managed. They can help resolve conflicts, right? So it's not just the teacher alone who's going to do repair, no, but there are students whom you can tap. And as one example would be the class council. So that's peer mediation. Okay, these are trained peers who guide a structured dialogue. Okay, next is class agreements. What does that mean? You co-create norms with the students. What do we all need to do? Sorry, what do we all need from each other to succeed here? Okay, so for instance, there's a growing tendency for some people in your classroom to arrive late for class in the morning. So yes, you process it and then you agree with the class. Okay, um, perhaps the night before we can all check on each other. Okay, and then we can remind each other to sleep early so that we can wake up early enough, refreshed and ready for class. Okay, or there's a growing tendency for students to submit reports or projects, homework late. Then nowadays we have chat groups, no, that you can actually tap and okay, in the evening, the evening before when the project is due, someone can we agree that we remind one another. Okay, so are you all ready, guys, for submitting our project tomorrow, our homework, right? So that you're setting a norm, which does not sound like it's a rule, but it's actually an agreement. Okay, and it attempts to address a problem, which is delinquency in the submission of uh, requirements. Okay, now we've heard of those 10 restorative practices. Let's talk about how teachers will will now receive these suggestions. First, a common concern is, what if they take advantage of what I'm going to do? I'm going to be very considerate, and my students can manipulate that to their advantage. Okay, or are we not being too soft? No, or this takes too much time. Okay, so that's understandable. No, while it is very, very easy for the go-to punishment, to resort to the go-to punishment, let's keep in mind that that is not the best way to address the concern. And while it may take time for you to be embarking on these reflection papers that you're going to ask them to do, or they are setting them aside to converse with them, or it might be too tedious for you to be regularly checking on them by even after class hours, let's say, or uh, it's so artificial for me to be saying hello to everybody in the canteen, all of my students when I see them. Let's keep in mind that uh, you are restoring your relationship and repairing it, so that you will be able to avoid further deterioration of misbehavior, and at the same time you're able to engage your students in repairing their own selves. Okay. Now, restorative practices, of course, will require that you reframe your perspective. You have to accept that discipline does not equate to punishment, okay? Because uh, punishment alone, as we have seen in the previous webinars that you may have attended in this series, and in this webinar as well this afternoon, punishment does not is not formative. Okay. That's the simplest way that I can put it. Punishment, or the meting out of punishments, is not formative, especially if there is disregard for the dignity of the offending party, and also if there is no attempt to go beyond just um, having to hold the student accountable for the offense. Accountability does not mean humiliation. Okay, when you hold the student accountable for an offense, that doesn't mean you have to embarrass the student in front of everybody and say, okay, look at John, he did not submit, and I'm asking him questions, he's not even answering me. He's not even explaining himself. I'm giving him a chance to explain himself, and he's not even answering my questions. Okay, so holding a student accountable does not mean you have to resort to humiliation. Definitely not, right? Okay. Now, restoration, therefore, means you enable the student to take responsibility for the offense that he had committed, and at the same time, you try to strengthen the relationship that you have with the student, because the student will see that you're actually concerned for him and you're not just being particular about holding him or her accountable for what he had done. Okay? Now, let's keep in mind, punishment changes behavior temporarily, relationships change behavior permanently. Okay? So, this once again emphasizes the fact that it's more important to maintain your relationship with your student and make sure that how you address the offense keeps that goal in mind. Okay, let's do a bit of reflection. Think of a student who always gets in trouble. What would restoration and not punishment look like for them? So I'd like all of you after this webinar to try and see what can be done in order for your mindset on punishment to shift towards restorative practices. Okay, so think of a student, and then think of an offense that the student committed either in the past or hypothetical, and how can you address that particular offense using any of the 10 restorative practices that were presented earlier? Okay, action plan. For us teachers, it's important that when we are introduced a new idea, one way for us to test drive it to see how it can apply to our daily routine is to come up with some kind of commitment to actually do it. Okay, so for this particular um, um, method, all right, which is the restorative practices. Let's try to see if you can commit yourselves by first, I will stop using, okay, let's say I will stop using giving a 0 for late submission. Okay, I will try this new approach. Um, Instead of giving a 0 right away, I will first talk to the student and I will find out what the reason is for the late submission, and I will consider giving point deductions instead of giving an outright 0 for the non-submission. And I will enable my student to meet another deadline after talking with him about what happened. Okay. And then it's important that whenever you're trying something new, you try to evaluate how it's going, no? And whether it's actually working. So I will evaluate its effect on classroom behavior. So does it seem like it's working, this kind of approach that I'm doing? Teacher-student relationships. Are my students responding to me better now that I am using this kind of approach instead of resorting to what I would traditionally resort to as a consequence whenever there is an offense? Okay. And then student-to-student relationships. Is the dynamic in the classroom better now that we've all agreed that, okay, part of making sure that there is order in the classroom is that we don't offend one another by talking at the same time. Okay. And then as a consequence, is the classroom culture being elevated? Is it improving? No? Are we able to work together better now because we've tried this approach, right? So I challenge our colleagues to try to apply any of the 10 restorative practices or a group of them or a handful of them, and then try to see whether it's actually working, right? And I challenge everyone to try to do it right away, okay, after this webinar. Next. So we've come to the end of this webinar. I hope mm, you learned something new. And after learning something new, I think what's even more important is how we are going to um, apply it in our day-to-day interactions with our students. Right? Thank you for listening, and thank you, Mr. Rentoy, for enabling me to have this opportunity to once again share a little something to our colleagues.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. De La Cruz. The QR code is already there on the screen, and you can also click on the link in the chat box to claim your certificate. Thank you so much, everyone. The next session is going to be on Monday next week. Bye, everyone.